Mayor Skoog.
Present.
Vice Mayor Nye is absent this evening. Councilmember Mallory.
She'll be back in a minute.
Oh.
She's here, yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Here.
Councilmember Grossman.
I'm here too.
And we have a quorum there.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, if council agrees, we'll take number 4 first. I guess Brian has some event he's got to get to real fast. So we'll start with number 4, presentation, Parks and Recreation, 5-year operations.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for your assistance. Tonight is our first showing in the movie series, and so that begins. And to accommodate our vendor and assist him and assure our discount, it's nice for me to be out there helping him make that happen. So that's what we're aiming for. Excuse me?
Congratulations.
Thank you very, very much for that. So we're looking at 5-year assumptions here for the Parks and Recreation Department's operational budget and operational budget only. We do have some assumptions out there how it would affect personnel and those growths. There is no conversation as it relates to capital development as we go through that process. But the operating assumptions that we have here are being taken out of the 2002 master plan, so it's some time ago for those kinds of things, so there will possibly be some recapitulation coming from that, and then also working within the growth scenarios from the 2025 plan, which is showing then that population growth and starting at 45,000 and then moving its way all the way up to 52. The increase in the population, of course, will have a direct impact on the quantity, not only that, but also the quality of the services that we're able to provide out of Parks and Recreation Department. So we do have some scenarios that could be possible considerations as it relates to not only full-time personnel, but also seasonal personnel in those operations. With our administration division, we see those increases within our operational budget directly relating to those personnel, as all of the folks for our full-time purposes are located either in administration or within our parks division, and that's where they're assigned from a financial standpoint. Support operations for any of those types of increases would be found within computers, desk or cell phones, office equipment, travel and education, and development of those staff members. The largest areas of growth would come out of bank services, as that line item is found with all of our programs and services and associated fees and charges coming from that. And then also the additions of copiers and computer upgrading throughout that time frame. Within our community and education division, predominantly that growth will come through the growth in programs and services. It will be largely found within instructor charges, professional services, travel and education, again, of the development of the staff, and specialty supplies and minor equipment in support of those programs and services. In total, you see about a 5% annual growth there. Again, these operations or assumptions within the operation budgets do not take into account any type of inflations or those types of things that will be grown and worked through based upon advisement coming out of our management services department. Within our adaptive division, those programs and services will see a sharp spike. That is largely due to the oversight of those recreation services and also inclusion compliance that's necessary in regards to all programs and leisure services that we provide throughout our department. Currently, you're seeing that we're providing little to no opportunities within that. This would be very specific programming directly for those populations within that area. So a large part of that would be your budget for professional services, and then the support supplies and equipment to be able to provide those events and activities as we go through. Our aquatics division increases out of that operation budget would be scheduled against instructor charges, permitting fees, general supplies, concession operations, sanitation, chemicals, things of that nature. Also, our utility rates, repairs, and maintenance will continue to escalate as that facility continues to age. Currently, we're in year 20. They generally find themselves at finishing their operating cycle within 25 to 30 year period of time. So that assumption is not put into this. But if we have failures, we have infrastructure breaks, those types of things that will probably start showing itself over time, those items will largely ramp up as it gets into our operating budget. A great example of that is in my previous experiences, we had a facility at a year 26, and one of its main feed lines ruptured. And literally the system went down and out. The only way was to go in and literally cut into the pool as well as the decks and excavate down in order to make those repairs. After that analysis was done, then you can go through and look at what possible other opportunities you can have available to you. So those types of things would want to look into, as well as then also a study in regards to an aquatics analysis for your consideration for new facilities coming into town. That assumption is not placed within this 5-year projection. Okay. The ICE division will basically reflect minimal changes. That would be increases within seasonal staffing rates. We're not anticipating any changes either up or down in regards to ICE operations, and continuing that relationship for the next period of time. The largest parts will come through for minor equipment replacement, which has been traditional for us, and repair and replacement of skates in that inventory. Within the Art and Culture division and the addition of professional staff, the following assumptions: we're showing a sharp incline in operations and a more predictable rate of growth after that period of time. A large increase of these areas would be in professional services, rentals, printing and publishing, permit fees from all of those different activities and services that would be provided, as well as then also supportive staff through their travel and education and growth. Outside impacts that are not known at this point in time would be any seasonal increases, as well as any any grants or donations that would be discovered through that addition of staff and time. Our Parks division is probably going to represent the sharpest period of growth. This is basically anticipated through the development of our master plan communities. There's an outstanding acreage of about 70 acres dedicated to park development. And so with those assumptions, we looked at starting in fiscal year 16-17. As we already know today, we're looking at the completion in that fiscal year of Bob Edwards Park, and we would have those associated development costs. Then in year 17-18, as well as 18-19, we would forecast out the development of 10 acres in each of those years, whether it be in Viewpoint or Pronghorn. And then in 19 and 20 would be an additional 10 acres in Stone Ridge, and then completing then the final remaining 40 acres that would be found within the Stone Ridge development. And that is showing those trends in regards to what the operating costs are, not only for general operating supplies, but then also the utilities behind them, predominantly found within water for those areas. And again, these assumptions were based upon a 40 to 50% turf development within each of those park sites. So those assumptions can change based upon how those areas are developed into its future. Our athletics division, as you know, largely revolves around all of the organized athletic sports. We'll also be looking at some outreach in regards to securing tournaments coming from outside of the community and participating there. That will, of course, have a very positive impact on your budget, as you'll see all of those growths, and that's what we'll be looking at there. But largely, these are for internal operations only that we're forecasting, and growth and development of new service lines that would be available to the community here. Our special events division, again, would like to see a sharp increase there in regards to the demand on services, events, and activities coming into the community. As you know, in years past, we've had several significant events that is dramatically changing, and that's where we would like to go ahead and move forward. There would be, again, professional staff developed behind that to be able to move those different line items forward for our services here. And overall, you're seeing a change in our department budget. Currently, right now, we're at $788,000 in our operating budget. This is forecasting moving up over the years to $1.4 million. Ironically, all of the operation forecasts that we're looking at here can be found as our normal operating budget would have displayed itself in either 06, 07, or 08, 09. So we're basically saying that right now we're very lean and mean. We think we can continue that trend and put ourselves back in that forecast and only still be operating within that 06, 07, 07, 08 budget period. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, these assumptions did not take any view in regards to capital or in large part any of that staffing growth and development.
Mary, you got a question?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Any other question? Rick?
I do. I know you've said that you didn't consider capital improvements in that, but I have a question about the pool.
Yes, sir.
Some years ago, we refurbished the pool.
Correct.
I understand that it has a lifespan on that.
Yes, sir.
When can we expect the pool to need service again?
Based upon trending past years and then just most recently, we'd probably be seeing that forecast coming out in the 2021 time frame, somewhere within that vicinity.
And do we see the same kind of refurbishing that we did the last time? Or are we
I would
beyond
say that would be minimum, not knowing what the other infrastructure calls might be through that course of time.
What was the cost the last time approximately?
I believe it was right around that $60,000 to $65,000 cost.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Mary, question?
Yeah, in regards to what Councilman Anderson was saying about the pool, refurbishing it, but not only that, we're probably going to need to look at actually probably making it bigger or getting another one, or in regards to our population,
Correct.
the pool's already met its capacity as we go right now.
Most
Is that
definitely.
right or not?
Yes. Traditionally, you would want to look at trying to provide services upwhere in that 10 to 15% population range. Right now, we're basically at about 1% with the current facility. And so that'll be some of that analysis that we'll need to be looking at as we're moving forward. The facility is aging. At some point in time, it's not going to be feasible to move that forward. And then secondarily, what direction do we want to head and how do we want to do that? So that would be part of it. Part of that could also be viewed in regards to looking at how we want to grow with the potential of Agua Fria Park. Those assumptions aren't put into this document here for you concerning operations. So you'd want to look at those types of things. There's a lot of sinking fund, if you will, the pool, the artificial turf at the pavilion field, those kinds of things that are going to be forecasted items looking at it from a capital perspective. I did not want to really get into those unforeseeable items until we know what direction or plan we want to head.
The one thing that's important to note is that Agua Fria Park does include in that master plan for that park an indoor and outdoor pool for Agua Fria Park. But one thing that's important to note is that we have seen an abatement, if you will, on the demand for the pool as it relates to our total population, because all of the master plan communities have their own pools.
Right.
So you take a look at Pronghorn, for example. They just added another pool, from what I understand, and then you've got two pools at Granville. You've got Stone Ridge Pool. You've got a Quailwood Pool. So those have helped serve the community as we continue growing. So that's been a huge benefit.
Okay.
It has definitely helped add, but with those calculations, looking at all of those different other amenities, I would probably guesstimate out of the top of my head right now, and total square footage or gallonage or how you want to look at it, combining all of those facilities along with Agua Fria now, Mountain Valley Splash, now you're in about a 3% population capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the Stone Ridge. I know we had originally a 40-acre, one of the two,
Yes, sir.
that was considered a possible regional park. Is that still the consideration?
Correct, and that would be your year 2021 assumption being made. That would probably be the last leg of any development that Stone Ridge would be obligated to, and so that's where I put it into that time frame. And that's where you see that large spike of that $150,000 operating cost.
So it's in the same site that was originally or has been in the plan before?
And until a master plan change comes about or anything like that, that's what we're anticipating.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? One thought, again, I may have missed, when are you planning to proceed on Bob Edwards Park?
Bob Edwards Park would be the ending of this next fiscal year coming forward, so 15-16, and then finalization in 16-17. So it'd be a double fiscal year process. And so that's where we've built in that assumption for literally probably the spring, summer completion in 16-17 for Bob Edwards Park.
Okay, good. Other questions? Yeah, I've had several people ask me about that. Anyone else? Mary, anything else? No.
No, sir.
Any other comments?
Look forward to capital discussions.
Good job. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to have a movie.
Okay, next we go to number 3, presentation, management services, 5-year operational projection. Bill?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm going to focus on the second page. I know Larry said to kind of focus on operational costs, and to follow in that, I have very little operational cost on here. So mine are more capital and a few other things that I would like to discuss. The first 4 items actually don't even pertain to management services. They're either part of a policy that we currently have in place, or there's, to lack of a better term, I guess, some financial stability is what I would like to see. The very first one is we have a policy about transferring our construction fund money to a capital growth fund. We haven't done that since 2007. I'd like to see that policy restored so that we don't focus on using one-time revenues to pay for operational expenses. In this year's or next year's budget, 15-16, we were close to achieving that. I'm projecting we're getting about $1 million from construction money. Last year, I think we were around $650,000. So we're really close to just using operating, long or regular revenues or non-one-time revenues to pay for operating expenses. So we're close in the upcoming fiscal year. But I'd like to see us to restore that policy. Right now, we should be at 100%. I think when we stopped, we were around 60% of our construction money. So, again, with the recession and everything, we just did away with that. So that would be one. The second one is the replacement fund. We actually stopped transferring money from the general fund into the replacement fund to, again, it was for lack of funding. And part of this was just for the cars, all of our vehicles. We don't have any large equipment, like Brian had indicated. The pool's not covered. Any of the ramadas are not in it. Any of those type of expenditures are not included in this. What they primarily focuses on are vehicles and the computer equipment. We have a lot of money invested in the computer equipment. It is expensive. So we set aside a certain amount every year. Okay, and so that one was also one that we actually stopped back in 2007. So that's another policy that I would like to see us start to go ahead and start implementing sometime in the next 5 years. Again, depending on how many vehicles we purchase over the next couple of years, you're looking at a cost of around $200,000 to $250,000, depending on how many vehicles, depending on what kind of depreciation life we use and things like that. So that's one of the costs. This one right here, the third one, is every year we have to the general fund transfers money to the cultural impact fee fund because there's not sufficient funds collected to make the annual debt service payment on the library. So 75% of the annual debt service payment is supposed to come from cultural impact fees, and the rest is general fund. Well, right now there's not sufficient funds in the cultural, so the general fund always transfers money to cover that difference, with the idea that in the long term, in the 10 years from now or so, the general fund will eventually get its money back. But what's happening is that our fund balance is growing, but as a result, our cash reserves are going down because we're transferring the money to the cultural fund. So what I would like to see is some means, it doesn't have to be the whole thing, but some means so that we retain some of that money in the general fund. So that would mean that we would have to, budget less expenditures, have a larger surplus basically in the general fund to allow this transfer to be taken into consideration. So it's just a financial, I guess, situation that I don't want to see us, the town, get into like 3, 4, 5 years from now. Again, our fund balance will be strong, but it's our cash reserves that are continuing to diminish year after year because of this transfer. So those are the non-management service related items that I would like to see us look at over the next 5 years. There's some small equipment. I'm going to skip over those. Oh, wait, I forgot one. Parkway. I would just like to see, if possible, us contribute some type of funding to the Parkway CFD. Every year going through this until there's a growth, which I'm not, it's going to be harder to grow in that area at this point. But I would like to see in some fashion some funding going back into Parkway CFD to help reduce their tax rate. In 2 weeks from now, we'll be setting the tax rates for all of the different CFDs and that, and it's very large. It's a very large tax rate for them. So that would be one of my plans, if we could. So now I'll jump into management services. One of the things that happened, again, during a downturn was that one of my finance managers left. I promoted my budget analyst into the finance manager. At that point, I didn't fulfill. I just basically let the finance man or the budget analyst position go empty. So at some point in the next 5 years, I think it would be important to bring that position back. It was very helpful. It was an extremely valuable position in creating and maintaining and analyzing the budgets. Yeah, creating the budget's one thing and preparing it, but ongoing process to make sure everything is falling in line, I think is very beneficial to have. The mailroom, right now we have a part-time mailroom person. We actually was full-time. We went to part-time when we outsourced the utility bills. I'd like to see that one at some point go back to full-time because Lee, my assistant, she really could use some assistance in the future. She does a lot of work is being added to her position, and this would be a way to help alleviate some of that extra work. I'm going to skip over the replacement switches, and that's you give Casey kind of a little bit of a leeway, and he kind of goes a little bit overboard. The virtual management system, this VM, where basically that's Casey's kind of getting out there, and it's probably more than 5 years out. He's probably out in 10 years. But with servers, there's a lot of new technology that's coming out there with servers. And every time we buy a new application or we do something different, it seems like a server is always associated with that. Well, now they're going into this technology where you can buy basically a virtual server, which can be, it's a piece of equipment, but it can store up to 10 or 12 different servers. But if you only need one or you only need part of it, you only pay for part of it. And if you need expansion, it's very easy to expand. So it's some new technology for the IT area. Casey, it's useful for administration and things like that. And expansion is easy to expand. So that's something that he would like to look at into the next 5 years, and maybe 4 or 5 years after that, we'd actually look at actually going into security system. All of the 3 buildings are kind of on different security systems, so he would like to, at some point, to try to make them all on one system. Some of the other areas that actually Casey will be involved in, Richard didn't really touch on it too much, but he's trying to get a grant to basically replace his Excella system. Right now, that's $750,000, which is pretty significant. So that's why he's looking at a grant. But again, the technology in a lot of these systems are starting to get pretty old. Like one of the ones for my system I'll talk about shortly. They are getting older. And so at some point, we are going to have to look at upgrading these systems in some capacity. Whenever this happens, Casey will be heavily involved in a lot of this, so that's why he kind of listed it. The police department, there's a couple with the police, especially the video cameras. That's going to be huge, especially from how to store that information. That's going to be the biggest part of this is storage. Police mobile command units, maybe the police chief will talk about that when he comes up, but it's going to be a huge expense. We're looking at about 50 at $5,000 or $9,000 a piece. So it's a pretty expensive piece or a changeover. Casey would like to add a couple people in the long run, especially one in the GIS to help Larry Prentice. Anytime we start upgrading our GIS system, especially bringing stuff over from the county and stuff like that, excuse me, we really need to have some more expertise in this area, more than what Casey has, more than what Larry Prentice has. So that's where the programmer would come in. Customer accounts. We're going to look at upgrading our online payment system. Mark talked to you a little bit about our IVR system. It's our payment engine would be our next one. So to upgrade that, we're looking at around $20,000. Forget the chairs and copiers. Potentially, we're going to see, we have a staff member here. As we grow, depending on what projections you look at for growth, if anything, I'm thinking we're going to need another person in billing. If we ever get to, 60,000 people, that equates to maybe 30,000 customers. Right now we have 19, and I have one person that does it full time. So at some point, we're going to have to add another part-time person or a full-time person for billing. The last one would be our accounting system. Right now, our accounting system we purchased in 2002. So we're going to have to look at upgrading that at some point. To keep on the same system that we have now will probably be around $100,000 as an upgrade. If we go to an entirely new system, we're looking at approximately, $1 million in cost. So it's a huge capital outlay for sure. So right now I would recommend, I have no issues with our accounting system. I think our accounting system's decent. I'm sure if you ask a lot of the other people, they would like something different. But it does what it's meant to do. It's a very stable system. I would recommend just upgrading it at this point. So with that, those are the list of my items I had for my 5-year before I lose my voice.
Questions, anyone?
Bill, I just had a question in regards to the upgrade online payment system.
Yes.
Is that what we just kind of talked? I'm
that's
getting
the
confused,
IVR,
right?
That's a phone system. This is if you go online to our website, and if you want to pay your utility bill, basically there's it's called Click to Gov.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one you go in, you enter in your account number, and you enter in your password, and then you can go in and pay your utility bill.
Okay.
This module, I think, has other capabilities too. So if you want to go online and pay your Parks and Rec fees, I think it's going to take business licenses.
Oh, okay.
It would take all of that. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be what we've seen. I haven't seen a live demonstration, but what I've seen in like PowerPoint, it's a lot more user friendly than what we currently have.
Okay. The other question I had is when you talked about, let me see, I don't even remember what you called it. The machinery that you can kind of store a lot of data, you
It's a-
use it as you, what was that?
The virtual management,
So you would only pay for what you actually
Correct.
had actually
right.
taken.
Yeah, right.
And
I mean,
going-
so you would have, it has storage capacity of up to, say, 20 servers.
Right.
If you pay for 10 servers, then if you need to buy more, then it's a lot easier to expand than buying another hardware, another actual physical piece of equipment. This is basically like a tower, and
Okay.
basically the various slots are all used up, and if you want to add another slot, you just pay for it and the slot becomes active. It's primarily for a management, because if you have upgrades and if you have some things that need to be changed, instead of changing and making upgrades into 10 different servers, basically it's one rack, and all those changes can be done a lot easier.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Other questions? Mike?
Yeah, I just was curious about the police mobile data terminals. What's different between a terminal and just a laptop? When I look at those, they look like laptops, but obviously they're not.
Well, they're a lot more than that,
Yeah.
and maybe the police chief can answer that more. Or I would have to bring Casey in here to give you all the details. But it's a lot more than just I mean, it has a lot of the components of a laptop. A lot of times they want the internet and they want a lot of that functionality. But there's a lot more. I think a lot of it goes into our internal systems, and there's a lot more of I think the durability. It's not as, there's a lot more to it than just like a standard laptop. And so I don't know if the chief wants to answer provide more
But you can
better
go into-
answer than that.
The chief can go into more detail than that when he does his presentation
Oh, okay.
on
Well,
his
that'd be fine.
department.
Yeah, that's good.
They ought to make a sculpture of that.
You had a comment besides Larry?
I hope you all heard that Bill is suggesting a virtual management services department. Isn't that what you were saying? I mean, I'm not
It's
sure.
easier to expand, and we can add more people when easier.
Yeah,
That's what he meant by that.
Virtual people, virtual department.
Right.
Yeah.
Real virtual.
Any other questions or comments?
At any point, there's any of these terminals can be replaced or upgraded?
Money?
Yes, next year. It's actually in next year's budget,
I asked.
15-16 budget. Pardon me?
So-
Sorry, it's going to be replaced. Yes, sir.
You want to use your microphone?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Mary, you had another question?
No, I was just thinking about the virtual and then virtual money too. Is it like just, how do you like that one?
There you go.
Does that work?
I think a lot of times after you get away from actually exchanging dollars,
Yeah.
it seems like whenever you use your credit card or debit card or anything like
Yeah.
that to pay nowadays, it doesn't even seem like that's real in it really either. But yeah, so
Anything else about virtual dollars? No other questions, comments? Bill, appreciate that.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Okay, we move on then to number 5, presentations, utilities, 5-year operation projection. Neil, you're up.
What noises are you making? Yeah, really.
All right, so I took my 4-page memo and converted it into a 30-slide presentation. So
Hoping you would.
I knew that.
Say 35 hours?
Use your microphone.
No, 30 slides, but I can do it at about 3 minutes a slide. So what's that, hour and a half maybe?
Oh, wow.
Get it done real quick.
Goodness.
All right, so I'm hoping you all had a chance to review the memo that I put together. And hopefully I'm going to keep it fairly brief, give you an idea of where we're going to go. I just, real quick, talk about the assumptions made, what types of needs, and then I'll go into the 4 different enterprise funds, or the 2 different enterprise funds with 4 different utilities, and do a real quick summary. So the population projections that we were using was basically a 3.8% increase over the next 5 years. Usually our wastewater flow rates and our water production numbers match those growth rates. We add a person, we add that much more water and wastewater as well, so that's the same. I've assumed that power costs are going to increase at about 3% per year based on historically what they've been doing. Biosolids growth the same, and inflation at 2% per year. What's going on here? Well,
Done. We're done. See, that was quicker than you thought.
yeah. I've got no control over this thing now. I don't know what's
Frozen. There you go.
okay. There, now it's working. You scared it. It walked up.
There you go. Try this.
All right, cool. Try that one now. Okay, so this just shows the population projection at the 3.8% increase per year, starting off at about 44,500 and going up to a little over 53,000. So there are a couple things that are going to happen here in the next couple years in terms of requirements. We have a regulatory requirement in our water system that when we hit a population of 50,000 people, we have to have a backflow prevention specialist on staff. So I programmed that in to the 4th or 5th year out. In addition, we've been talking with ADEQ, and they frequently tell us that we need to do something in terms of a wastewater pretreatment program. And the first step on that would actually be to implement a fats, oils, and grease program called a FOG program, which would be somebody going out doing inspections on typically restaurants to make sure their grease traps that they're getting them pumped on a routine basis, and they've got the records showing that, so we would have to add somebody to do that. And then that person would evolve into a pretreatment coordinator covering industry and other things as well. For water and wastewater, we do a lot of stuff with GIS, and we would like to help fund what you heard Bill say. He'd like to help fund some of what Larry's department does. We would like to get somebody helping him as well that could focus primarily on doing utilities. Since all of our stuff is underground, it's important to know where it is, and when subdivisions come in and we're adding things all the time, especially through growth periods, it's difficult to keep up with it. So we'd like to fund a position out of wastewater and water to get some help with Larry doing that. And then construction inspector. Back when we were booming real good back, all the way up through 2007, we had 4 construction inspectors on staff. 2 of them were in the utilities department, 2 of them were in the public works department. Right now we have 1. So probably over this next 5-year period, we're going to have to add in additional inspectors to cover the same types of projects, the growth in the subdivisions, the new subdivisions, the capital projects. And so since 2 of those were housed in utilities, we anticipate that in addition to the one that we have right now in utilities, in another year or 2, probably 2 years, we would add another construction inspector. Public Works may need to add one next year, and so maybe adding one a year for the next 4 years or something like that. We just have to see what the growth brings. So this is a breakdown of what the costs for the water system look like. As I mentioned to you, I put power on there at a 3% annual increase. The OMI contract also at a 3% increase. The additional town personnel you'll see in 16-17, the $32,500 is a GIS technician that would be shared with wastewater. And then the following year, it bumps up to $57,000. That's the addition of about $50,000 also split with wastewater. That would be for the construction inspector. So those would be the only two personnel additions I would anticipate in the next 5 years. You can see that the total operating budget goes up from 4.7 to 5.8 million dollars, an average of 4 to 4.5% increase per year. Similarly, on the wastewater side, power, biosolids, and the OMI going up at 3% a year. The additional town personnel would also mimic what was in the water system. The other category down at the bottom, you may ask what that is. Essentially what that is that's the remainder of the town's budget for wastewater. I basically called out the things that were kind of high dollar items every year, and then the rest is the stuff that falls. It's paying for fuel for vehicles, and it's just miscellaneous stuff that we do. And you can see that budget goes up from 2.6 to about $3.4 million over the 5-year period. Reclaimed water, again, the similar cost increases for power and for the OMI contract. And that budget goes from about $250,000 up to $313,000. Recharge, very similar. The only increase we're showing in here that's maybe to point out is in the fiscal year 18-19. We're adding a 0.25 of an FTE to OMI's contract for we're anticipating about that time we would probably be expanding the recharge facility. So they would need to have a little bit more feet on the ground in order to do the maintenance and reporting on that. So we're anticipating they'd add a quarter of a full-time employee. And so this is basically the culmination of all of that. I've combined all of the budgets together. And what I wanted to do was look at two things. Where are we going forward, and where did we come from? And so you see the blue line on here is the historical population numbers. And the green line is the corresponding operating budget for the 4 utilities combined. You can see there's a lot of variability in the operating budget. But if you look at about the 01-02 time frame and moving forward up to 13-14, you could almost draw a straight line between there and see a very common trend in there. And moving forward from 15-16 through 20-21, you can see what the numbers that I'm projecting, how that would look on there. So it's kind of a sounding board for me. Do these numbers make sense? Does it look realistic, or does it look really out of whack? And so kind of looking at this, it gives me some comfort that it looks like these numbers are fairly reasonable. So that was kind of it. So that's the end of my presentation.
Questions? Mike?
Yeah, I just had a couple. One was the mandate for after I think it was a 50,000 population, we need backflow specialists. What specifically is that?
A backflow specialist is somebody that reviews information and can do inspections on the backflow preventers that are on the water system. So any commercial building that goes in right now, after the water meter, there's a backflow device.
I got it.
And we have to have somebody that can be able to review that kind of information. I'm not 100% sure. I think we can probably contract that out through OMI, right, just like we do, as long as we've got somebody that's certified. But it's a requirement that we have to have after 50,000.
And the other question I had was on Stone Ridge. Is Stone Ridge locked in terms of use of the effluent, or how is that arranged? Or do we anticipate a change in that ever, as far as that goes?
Not unless their golf course is going to dry up and blow
over. Is that
over.
right? Yeah. So it would be contingent.
As long as they need the water, I'm assuming we're obligated to give it to them. I haven't reviewed the agreement with them. Ivan may know right off the top of his head, but I don't.
I'm just kind of curious. It's a good use, I think, and
Well, we don't want to have to provide them potable water at this point.
yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Good. Other questions? Anyone? Anything else about biosolids or anything?
I think I'm good.
You're good, huh? There's no questions and no other comments?
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Good job there, Neil. Okay, with that, our special work study is adjourned, and you need time to transfer over to the other, Diane?
Yes, just about 2 minutes, sir.
We'll take recess.